Johan Cruyff once said, playing football is very simple, but playing simple football is the hardest thing there is. Welcome to The Explainer, everyone. Now that is a brilliantly frustrating paradox, isn't it? But honestly, it perfectly captures the heart of what we're looking at today.
Today, we're focusing on the architect who essentially built modern football's ultimate blueprint. Seriously, if you've ever wondered why the beautiful game looks the way it does right now, why the very best teams play with this mesmerizing, almost telepathic rhythm, well, you have to understand the story of this one singular genius. We're going to dive deep into a system of play that literally rewired the sport from the ground up.
So here's the massive question we need to answer. How exactly did one man invent modern football? And spoiler alert, the answer isn't just about raw athletic talent or, magical footwork. It actually lies in understanding the geometry of space, fluid movement, and having total, unyielding control over literally every single blade of grass on the pitch. So let's explore exactly how he pulled this off.
Section 1. The 4-3-3 Blueprint. Okay, let's dive straight into the tactical origins of this whole story.
To really get Johan Cruyff, we first have to look at the philosophy that created him: total football. Now, this was a fluid, tactical philosophy emphasizing flexibility, positional interchange, and spatial dominance among the outfield players. It was pioneered by the legendary Dutch coach Rinus Michels, and it fundamentally shifted the game. See, instead of players being locked into these rigid, super predictable lines, the entire team suddenly operated in dynamic, flowing space. If a defender moved forward, boom, a midfielder dropped back to cover. It was basically orchestrated chaos, and it left opponents completely dizzy.
But here's the catch. Making this beautiful fluidity actually work requires absolute physical and mental perfection. The 4-3-3 formation demands highly athletic fullbacks, exceptionally technical midfielders, a specialized holding midfielder to kind of anchor the chaos, disciplined wide forwards, and constant off-ball movement. And above all else, elite fitness. I mean, think about it. If a team doesn't have the lungs to relentlessly press the opponent and quickly cover those vacated spaces, this whole aggressive system just instantly collapses. It's a massive high-reward philosophy for sure, but the stakes are dangerously high.
Let's zoom in on the engine room, the midfield trio. In a 4-3-3, this unit has to be carefully balanced to protect the defense while fueling the attack. First, you have the defender, serving as the anchor, shielding the backline and sweeping up gaps left by those bombing fullbacks. Then there's the controller. This is the metronome of the team, setting the tempo and safely recycling possession. Finally, you've got the creator, tasked with linking that midfield to the forward line with absolute killer passes. This precise division of labor is absolutely crucial. It's what perfectly balances the aggressive trap of the formation and stops the team from getting ripped apart by quick counterattacks.
Section 2. Cruyff the Revolutionary. Now, let's meet the rebellious guy who actually weaponized this tactical blueprint.
Now, what's really interesting is that Cruyff's influence was so massive, it actually spilled right off the pitch and into the locker room. Back at the 1974 World Cup, Cruyff was personally contracted to Puma, but the Dutch national team's kit was famously made by rival brand Adidas, complete with those iconic 3 stripes running down the sleeves. Well, Cruyff, being fiercely independent and totally aware of his unparalleled value, flat out refused to wear the 3 stripes. He literally threatened not to play in the World Cup at all. So, facing the terrifying prospect of losing the best player on the planet, he forced the Dutch Federation to create a custom 2-stripe jersey just for him. No way, right? It was an unthinkable, deeply rebellious gesture for the time, and it just proved he operated entirely on his own terms.
14. That is the staggering number of years FC Barcelona went without winning a Spanish league title before Johan Cruyff finally arrived as a player in 1973. An entire generation of fans had grown up just watching their bitter rivals dominate while their club suffered. Barcelona was desperate, they were fractured, and they were sitting near the bottom of the table when they signed him. But the impact? Completely immediate. In his very first season, Cruyff turned the whole institution around, dramatically ended that 14-year drought, and injected this fearless, commanding new mentality into the club's DNA.
But while Cruyff's playing days were iconic, his true masterpiece was still to come. Section 3. Building the Dream Team.
The contrast here is just stark. Before Cruyff returned to manage the team in 1988, Barcelona played with a very rigid structure. They heavily prioritized physically imposing players who could win tackles, and, surprise, surprise, they were stuck in yet another brutal title drought. But after Cruyff, he essentially threw the old playbook into the fire. He institutionalized a highly fluid 3-4-3 geometry, shifting the entire focus away from brute strength and entirely onto pure technique. The result of this massive cultural shift was a squad known simply as the Dream Team, a unit that won 4 consecutive La Liga titles and in 1992 lifted the club's first ever European Cup.
So how exactly did he trigger this transformation? Well, it started by completely redefining how players thought about the ball itself. He famously declared, "Technique is passing the ball in one touch with the right speed at the right time to the right foot of your teammate." For Cruyff, technique wasn't about being able to juggle a ball 1,000 times. He actually openly mocked that, saying anyone can do that and go work in a circus. Real technique was about pinpoint, ruthless, geometric efficiency. It was all about making the ball do the running so the players didn't have to.
So the crucial point is that this philosophy led to one of his most consequential impacts on the sport. Brains beat brawn. Cruyff mandated a complete overhaul of Barcelona's famous youth academy, La Masia. He demanded that scouts immediately stop looking for physical size and raw athleticism. In a global footballing landscape that constantly discarded smaller players as too weak to compete, Cruyff ordered his academy to prioritize spatial intelligence and technical grace above all else. This single massive shift in scouting criteria saved the careers of incredibly gifted smaller players. It quite literally paved the way for undersized generational legends like Xavi, Andres Iniesta, and ultimately Lionel Messi.
All right, let's step out of the academy now and right onto the grass. Section 4, the Tactical Masterclass. Traditionally, a striker, like the great Gary Lineker, for example, stayed pretty predictably fixed in the penalty box. They'd wrestle with big defenders and wait to score from crosses or through passes. But Cruyff completely revolutionized the position into what we now call the false nine. He deployed brilliant, technical players like Michael Laudrup in this role and intentionally instructed them to abandon the penalty box and drop deep into the midfield. The primary goal wasn't just to score directly, it was to create numerical superiority in the middle of the pitch. This caused absolute confusion among opposition center backs. It dragged them hopelessly out of position and created massive, exploitable gaps in their defense.
Let me walk you through the exact mechanics of attacking in Cruyff's 4-3-3. Step 1. You push your defense incredibly high up to the halfway line. The goal here is to compress the opponent's playing space entirely. Step 2. You overload the wings using those athletic fullbacks and wide forwards, stretching the opposition's defensive line until it breaks. And step 3, your central midfielders dynamically push past that central striker, who, remember, has dropped deep, to overwhelm the box with arriving bodies. It's this fluid, suffocating mechanic that essentially traps the opposing team in their own half and just drowns them in pressure.
And the core secret behind all of this movement, the geometry of possession. Cruyff was absolutely obsessed with spatial geometry. Every single player had to position themselves to constantly form a triangle with their teammates. This simple but incredibly profound rule ensured that the ball carrier always, without fail, had at least 2 safe passing options. This relentless movement and the constant creation of passing triangles is the direct origin of the quick passing style the world would later come to call tiki-taka.
From those geometric passing triangles emerged a sprawling modern empire. Section 5, an enduring legacy.
The evolution of total football is just incredible when you trace it through the decades. Back in 1974 as a player, the iconic Cruyff Turn completely shocks the world at the World Cup, instantly defining a new era of individual brilliance. Jump forward to 1992, and Cruyff the manager leads Barcelona's dream team to their very first European Cup, validating his system on the ultimate stage. Fast forward once more to 2009, and Pep Guardiola's Barcelona wins an unprecedented 6 trophies in a single year, the historic sextuple, dominating world football using the exact blueprint Cruyff laid down decades before.
And speaking of Pep Guardiola, he famously summarized it best. "I would not be here without Johan Cruyff. He was unique." It's kind of incredible to think that Guardiola was once just a skinny, 18-year-old player in a friendly match, famously yelled at by Cruyff at halftime for being slower than his granny. But Cruyff relentlessly pushed him. He taught him to use both feet and molded his deep, philosophical understanding of the game. That chastised teenager absorbed literally every lesson and eventually became the ultimate, undisputed heir to Cruyff's tactical throne. Which leaves us with this final, provocative question for you to think about. Where will you spot Cruyff's geometric fingerprints the next time you watch a modern football match? I challenge you, the next time you turn on a game, don't just follow the ball. Look for the passing triangles forming in real time. Watch for the incredibly high, risky defensive lines. Keep an eye out for that central striker dropping deep to confuse the defense as a false nine. The architect may be gone, but his brilliant blueprint is still being played out on the grass every single weekend. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I hope you found it as fascinating as I did. Keep looking for the geometry out there.